You're welcome back from that quick timeout. It's still Daybreak here on Trust Television, and it's time for our discussion segment. Now, if you were with us during our interactive segments where we spoke about the World Bank loan, I stated that we'd be doubling back on that conversation in our discussion segment. So, we're talking about World Bank loans. Is it a blessing or a curse to Nigeria's economic recovery? Now, Nigeria's economic landscape has been dominated by a flurry of World Bank loans, with the latest being a 500 million loan to boost economic resilience. But as the country's debt profile continues to rise, concerns are growing about the long-term implications of this borrowing spree. Now, under the President Bola Tinubu's administration, Nigeria has received approval for 11 World Bank projects, totaling 7.45 billion US dollars in less than 2 years. However, data reveals that only 16% of the approved amount has been disbursed, sparking debates about the efficiency of project execution and the fund utilization. So, as Nigeria navigates its economic recovery efforts, the success of these initiatives will heavily depend on effective planning, coordination, and execution. But would these loans be a blessing or a curse to this economic recovery journey that Nigeria is on? Will they provide the much needed stimulus to drive growth, or will they exacerbate the country's debt crisis? How important are these loans to the country's development? Would it see a faster economic recovery process, or this is rather taking us 2 steps backwards rather than forwards? The poor utilization, what is the utilization process of the loans being collected? Now, joining us right here to analyze on this critical issue is Steve Nwachukwu, a renowned economist, financial analyst, and a lead researcher at Steward Asset Management Limited. So with his expertise, we'll delve into the complexities, of Nigeria's debt situation and explore possible solution for a sustainable economic growth. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Okay, thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, kick in straight to it now. What's your take on this Nigeria's World Bank loans and our attitude towards taking loans in general? Where do you stand?
Oh, quite a difficult moment to discuss this kind of issue. One, we have a rising debt profile, and on the other hand, we also have a rising need to invest in infrastructures to care for those schools, those hospitals, those roads, those airports, and to deal with other issues that has to do with human capital development. So there is a pressing need for funds so that we can expand this very economy and deal with these very aforementioned issues. On the other hand, also, we have a challenge of our growing debt service, growing debt profile, and its consequences on Nigerians and its consequences in our budget in itself. Because funny enough, when you borrow more, when you widen your tax debt net, also have in mind that it will also affect your debt servicing. It will also be widened. So it's quite a challenging moment, and the angle, perhaps most Nigerians are much concerned, and most of us, is the fiscal discipline, the lack of fiscal discipline in management of these very borrowed funds. There are too many of them that we have borrowed that we cannot have a trace or accountability to these very funds that have been expended to Nigeria. Just like your statistics and data rate, in the last 2 years, this administration have received over $7 billion alone from World Bank, and you cannot account to where this money has been expended to. In fact, a good number of these projects are very funny programs. And some of us also will reason from this perspective that, does it mean that the World Bank and other donor agencies facilitated loans are designed to be siphoned, or this money not to have impact in the lives of Nigerians or those who receive this fund? Are this money basically designed, or these programs basically designed for corrupt practices? I think that's a very big question that is left for those in the corridors of power and those who facilitate these very loans and also those who disperses these loans, do they have a peer review mechanism to assess the success of these very programs and why it has to be ended or be extended? So I think it's left for them to actually answer this, because we have seen lack of fiscal discipline, implementation, and follow through to these very programs. And have in mind also the essence of picking loan or having any project is to have, first, there are three big layers. First is the input, the second is the output, and the third is the impact assessment of it. So yes, you take a loan for a certain reasons, for a certain programs, for a certain project. Now the money is disbursed. The output is how much is this very execution of these very borrowed funds, these projects or these programs that you've outlined that you're going to disburse or channel this money or deploy this money to. So that is the output. Then the impact is this very, what has these very loans or these programs achieve in the lives of Nigerians whom you targeted these loans and this project on. So the input, output, and impact assessment is where we are lacking. That is where I said the fiscal discipline is not there. That is why I also accuse those who lend this money to Nigerians that most of these programs are designed to corrupt practices or to aid money laundering and to aid corrupt practices, because we have not seen the impact of these billions and trillions of naira dispersed to tackle issue of malnutrition, issue of childbirth issues, or issue of infrastructures, name it, hospital and other issues that are related to human life and life expectancy.
All right, let's not count it all bad, Given your experience as a researcher as well, historically, has there been any World Bank loan, that has really worked towards Nigeria's economic growth and development? Can you put your hands on any that you have seen that made an impact, like you said, that had the input, output, and impact, in the lives of the people? Not necessarily in this or in previous administrations.
There are a couple of them. Unfortunately, I can't lay hand on anyone. There are a couple of World Bank assisted programs that have had a greater impact and better impact in the lives of Nigeria. Mostly the ones that has to do with education, and some of them that also has to do with aiding and eradication of poverty. I think a couple of them has really impacted. But what we have seen in recent times is that most of this money, most of these programs, quite funny program. Take, for instance, in this very dispensation, we've had programs and such funny programs like Hope for Quality Basic Education for All, Accelerating Nutrition Research in Nigeria, Community Aid Action for Resilience and Economic Stimulus. So these are the kind of funny programs that you cannot tie to individual, you cannot be tied to communities, you cannot be tied to a certain programs or projects that Nigerians can have a visibility, a feel, and a touch of such program. I think that's where the challenge is. Yes, there are a couple of World Bank assisted programs that have actually impacted in the lives of Nigerians. Where I used to live in Omahia is a World Bank assisted program. It's called World Bank Housing Estate. So World Bank actually assisted in building that very estate. Nigerians and the communities who participated in it are living evidence of such programs that assisted them in having 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom flat apartments. So there are a couple of such programs that are successful.
All right, now it seems like Nigeria is to an extent depending on external borrowing. Where does this leave our economic recovery process that we've been on for a while now? What does this say about, debt sustainability, fiscal health, and the economic recovery progress or process that Nigeria is on?
I think I should answer this question from this perspective that we should rejig our national strategic plans and fine-tune it so that it can suit our current economic realities and situations. The best we can do for ourselves is to rejig it and make sure that we cut off all wastages and excesses and rechannel any funds of such nature or resources to where they are needed most. We can, yes, as a nation, discontinue programs or projects that are not, like I said again, having that very impact assessment and pay review of such projects. In the lives of Nigeria, we have a couple of immediate need for funds. So we should make due to channel such funds to such critical national need for such funds than moving or in continuing in frivolosities and funding projects and programs that does not have direct impact in the lives of Nigerians. So yes, we need to recheck our national strategic economic plan so that we can plan better and have a direction where we are headed. Yes, there are openings also. Like I said earlier, let us not be tempted by these very openings, windows, opportunities to borrow, both local and international. But let us be mindful of the impact in the lives of Nigerians. Let us also be mindful of the burden on debt servicing. As we speak, our debt to GDP ratio is above 60%, around 62 to 65%, and is continuing to grow. This administration came and gave us hope. In fact, I listened to the current minister of economy, the minister of finance and coordinating minister of economy, when he vowed, when he made a promise that they will desist and they will cut down. In fact, even the Mr. President himself made that very statement that they will not engage in excessive borrowing, given the fact that the successive administration, the immediate past administration of President President Buhari, engage in excessive debt borrowings and the rest, raising our debt from somewhere around 12.7 trillion, where I left it at 97 trillion. So this administration actually made a promise that they are going to cut down on excessive borrowing. But lo and behold, they are engaging in excessive borrowing. They made the they made the debt profile of Nigeria around 97 trillion. Currently, we are sitting above 150, 155 trillion. So it's quite alarming. We should be mindful of such programs and projects that
But is it
make available by World Bank or local opportunities. We should be mindful of the debt net servicing of our components in our budget. As we speak, the 2025 saw our debt servicing above 15 or 16 trillion naira. It's quite alarming, and it's a question of depriving Nigeria or depriving the physical components of the project where we can have some capital expenditure spent while now we are channeling it to service our debt. That is what debt deprives us from the budget.
But a quick question. We've seen that there are other economies, developing countries, that actually go ahead to take loans to fund capital projects, and we see that it is working for them. Is it possible for Nigeria, to stop taking loans with how our economy is currently at the moment? Is it possible for a next administration to come and say, okay, they're no longer going to take loans? Can they sustain the economy based on what we have at the moment?
Yes, it's quite possible. I earlier spoke about the fiscal discipline and the cutting off wastages and linkages, and also rejigging our national economic strategic plan. These are the ways you can raise these funds and cut off all these wastages and make sure that whatever you have, that you are prudent enough to maximize the impact of such funds and resources in the lives and tackle the most needing projects and programs of government. So I think it's possible. Now, come to think of it also, let's reflect back from the statements and even the development statistics available in this very administration. The government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu have made a lot of savings. The government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu have really raised a lot of resources and revenue bars. As we speak, the 2025 budget has contained, we have a revenue target or estimate of 41 trillion from somewhere around 18, 16 to 19 trillion where he met it to 41 trillion. That's a lot of resources. So government is raising a lot of money. We had issue of fuel subsidy removal and you are 7 trillions. And you raise taxes, you raise tariff. These are all resources to the government. Then you also had the flotation policy of the government, which saw Naira devalued, and a lot of resources are also coming to government. We're also witnessing a gradual increase in the crude oil production from somewhere around 1.2 million barrels per day production. We are currently hitting, based on the last data or last statistics, we are hitting around 1.8 or 1.7 million barrels per day. These are all additions or increase in revenue. So who says that we cannot maximize these opportunities and revenues to tackle these very national pressing needs of Nigeria than resulting in borrowing? So we can, if we can tell ourselves the truth and apply all sense of financial prudence, financial discipline, yes, we can. We can make use of what we have to attack most of these very pressing needs. Yes, I know also for sure that the physical or infrastructure needs of Nigeria needs close to 10 to 15, $10 million investment to address these very infrastructural deficits and decays in the next 10 years. We need an investment over $10 billion annually to tackle most of this very lack of infrastructure in aviation, in our hospitals and healthcare system, in our education system, name it, in all areas of our infrastructure's needs. So we need an investment worth over $10 billion. But we should not, because there is a pressing need for this very dealing with these infrastructures, be in a haste or in a quest to actually subject Nigerians' physical discipline to such a radical and reckless borrowing that we are witnessing in the last 2.5 decades.
All right,
Thank you.
now let's talk about conditionalities of such loans that come around. We know that world banks often come with policies and conditions. How is this affecting Nigeria as a nation?
For sure, a couple of these very policies, a couple of these very attachments, loan attachment conditionalities are, yes, of course, the World Bank and the IMF also have what they call the country conditionality adjustment, where you can review such conditions of such program to the best of applicability of such programs in your home country. So they have such opportunity. But what happens most often is that most of our facilitators or diplomats of individuals that engage in fine-tuning and raising this money don't have that thinking cap to be innovative enough to adjust most of these very conditionalities to the best interests of Nigeria. Yes, we have witnessed where in the last 2-3 years, we have World Bank and IMF have conditioned Nigeria to reduce most of these subsidies, which have resulted in economic hardship that we witnessed. We've saw one of such conditionalities is that government has to remove its hands in subsidy application in the petroleum sector. We also saw the conditionality that government has to remove their hand in subsidy in the electricity sector, so in the energy sector. So we saw the hike in our electricity. We also saw hike in the petroleum products, particularly the PMS, and the consequential effect to the Nigerian economy as we speak. So I think the leaders, those within those corridors of power who has this opportunity to fine-tune this very conditionality, they are not casting stones. You can adjust it to the best applicability and peculiarity of your nation. I think that's what these very individuals needs to be doing.
All right, quickly now before we go, let's wrap up. In conclusion, what is the future outlook of it, considering the economic trajectory at which we're on and the existing debt obligation? What strategies do you think Nigeria should adopt to balance the benefits, boost transparency and accountability, and carry out projects that Nigerians would actually see a difference from these loans, and also have a proper payment plan in such a way that we will not see the ripple effects in the economy? What is the way forward?
The way forward cannot be far from the being discipline, being physical discipline application, and being prudent in management of this very fund. And be sincere to your nation, be sincere to Nigerians. Like I said earlier, yes, these opportunities, these openings, these windows are available, both local and international, for you to raise funds as much as you need. But the question is, you should be mindful, you should be considerate of the consequential effect of these loans, what it deprives Nigerians. Like I said earlier, when you borrow, when you have an addiction of debt or increasing your debt net, also have in mind that your debt servicing net will be widened. That's a consequential effect of borrowing. So when you borrow, it deprives Nigerians. For instance, let's subject this to the 2025 budget allocations and application to various subheadings. You find out that debt servicing took close to 16 trillion naira. That is a consequential effect of debt crisis, of the debt profile we have. If we have a lower debt profile, it will be a lower debt servicing. So, and that 16 trillion that was channeled or deployed in debt services would have been channeled in education, would have been channeled in road construction, would have been channeled in health. Now we are using the 16 trillion to service our debt. So that is the consequential effect of raising our debt. So government officials and the leadership should be mindful of these very realities and make sure that they cut most of the ambitions and desire to borrow. Opportunities are there to raise these funds, but be mindful of it and be financial prudent in management of our mega resources.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve Nwachukwu, for always joining us on the show and giving us, a broader insight and deeper analysis of economic issues that affect Nigerians. We appreciate your input. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, to our listeners out there, I hope you were able to pick something out from our conversation this morning. To everyone who has spoken about the pros and the cons and borrowings and debt, I hope you've been able to, get a ground understanding through our experts on how this works, where it leaves Nigeria and the future of our nation, and how we could hold our political leaders accountable as to understanding the kind of loans that have been taken, what they should be used for, how they should impact the lives of the people, the input and the output, and all whatnot that was mentioned. I hope we've been able to keep you informed this morning. Now, having said that, we've come to the end of that segment. We'll be going on a quick break, and when we get back, we'll be looking at stories that made it to the headlines of our daily newspapers. Do stay, we'll be right back.